Hello and welcome to the DrivingMaul June Internationals Round 1 predictions. I'm Paul, the guy behind DrivingMaul, and whilst a lot of the coverage is all about the Lions Tour, and we still have a Super Rugby game coming this weekend, there's also a feast of international rugby to get our teeth into. This weekend we have 5 games involving Tier 1 nations and at least 3 that involve Tier 2 nations that I'm aware of. There may be other games going on as well. So let's just run through those and let you know how I think they're going to play out. By the way, always up for good rugby chat, so please do put your comments in either live or after the show. So always up for good rugby chat. So we kick off with Italy playing Scotland in Singapore for what I believe is the first time that Singapore has hosted a Tier 1 international rugby game. Italy really, apart from that one game against England where they pulled a bit out of the rabbit out of the hat, had a poor Six Nations, let's be honest, whereas Scotland very much were on the up. Scotland also have only lost a handful of players to the Lions, in Greg Laidlaw, Stuart Hogg and Seymour. So they're not going to be, so they've still got most of their players. And remember, Greg Laidlaw was injured for quite a lot of that Six Nations. So I'm backing Scotland to win that one by about 14 points. Next up, we have Australia hosting Fiji in Melbourne. Now, Australia rugby at the moment is down in the dumps. If morale-wise, if not playing wise, and they obviously haven't had that loss against England, or 3-0 loss against England on tour last year. The Super Rugby franchises haven't been going well, and a lot of people are very down on Australian rugby. So a game against Fiji is the ideal sort of pick-me-up, because let's be honest, Fiji there'll be lots of endeavour and big hits. They shouldn't provide too much of a challenge for Australia. Even though Australia have slipped up in these kind of ones before, especially if they get a lot of wet weather. So if it keeps dry, I think they should be fine. And I'm backing Australia by 14 there. It's going to be really interesting to see what centre combination they go for. Australia seems to be stacked with 13s, but not many 12s. So it's going to be interesting to see how they handle that inside conundrum. One that's obviously, as an England fan, I've been very aware of until the last year or so. Then the sort of big game of the weekend, South Africa hosting France up in the Loftus-Versfeld of Pretoria. So that should be the game of the weekend in this sort of this tournament, as it were. But it's not really a tournament, is it? In this group of games, anyway. For South Africa, another team that really have been in the doldrums, losing to Italy and not winning any of their tour games during the November tour last year. This is their first opportunity to get back together again and right some of that. On the flip side, France really are a resurgent side, and especially with they did really well both in November and the Six Nations, and you can see how they're growing, and they're back to themselves after a sort of 8-year hiatus, and with the union and the clubs talking to each other and getting on much better. You can see them growing more. So even though it is away, I am going to back France to win this one by 3, which I must admit, I'm not sure what their record is like in South Africa, but I'm expecting it isn't that great. Then we head over to Argentina, where the Pumas are hosting England in San Juan, and England obviously have lost a lot of players to the Lions. But Argentina really are not the side they were at the last Rugby World Cup. Their new policy of only picking players that play Super Rugby essentially keeps them to just the Jaguares plus one player, or at least there was one player before, the Brumbies in the scrum half, but I think he might have gone back now. So they really have a very small player pool to choose from. They're not choosing any of their players from Europe. If they're not playing Super Rugby, they're not allowed to, or they're not picking them to play for the international side. I've heard they had a few injuries as well. So I'm backing England to win this one by 10, even though they are blooding a lot of youngsters and there will be a lot of players away on Lions duty. To finish the Tier 1 games, or games involving Tier 1 sides, the USA are hosting Ireland in Red Bull Arena down in New Jersey. Not down, that's up north, isn't it? Just south of New York, in New Jersey. And with Mitchell has announced he's off to the Bulls. So yes, his contract taking him through to the next Rugby World Cup clearly wasn't watertight, and he's decided to head off. So so you've got to wonder what state the players' minds are going to be in with that. Ireland, again, like England, have lost a lot of players to the Lions, so there'll be a lot of inexperienced players there. Still, they should put the USA away by at least 14 points. So that's the 5 Tier 1 games. In Tier 2, we have Japan hosting Romania, with Japan hosting the All Blacks next year, or at least there's going to be a game. I'm assuming they're playing Japan. And with Japan's win over South Africa, Japan really are the sort of top Tier 2 side in my mind. I know a lot of people talk about Georgia, but I think Japan have got more of the giant killings. Romania, mind you, did beat Georgia recently in the was it European Champions, not European something Cup, basically the Six Nations B or Tier 2 tournament. But still, at home, you'd be looking at Japan to win that one by sort of 10-ish, I'd have thought. Coming down, Brazil are facing Portugal in Sao Paulo in Brazil. To be honest, I really have no idea as to how that one will pan out. Brazil are part of the America's Rugby Championship now, so they do get regular games. And I can't remember how Portugal went, but not particularly great, I don't think, in their spring tournament. And then finally, to wrap things up, Canada are hosting Georgia. And again, with Georgia being one of those teams that's trying to get into a Tier 1 competition, this is the kind of game they need to be winning, and winning relatively comfortably. Having lost to Romania in the last time out, they're going to need a big game here. But I'd expect Georgia to win by about 10 or so. So those are all the games I'm aware of coming up this weekend for the international rugby. Do let me know your thoughts below. And I'm off to the Blues versus the Lions tonight, so look out for a whole bunch of tweets around that. Catch you all tomorrow with another video. Looking forward to the Crusaders versus the Lions at the weekend.